Hello, my name is Linda McAnany, and welcome to my show. My guest today is Dr. Jill Brady. Jill is a veterinarian at Westside Veterinary Clinic here in Jefferson City. I don't know why I had to stumble over that. It's pretty easy, isn't it? Anyway, welcome, Jill, and thanks for joining me. And we've chatted before, but every time we talk, I learn things. Sometimes I relearn things because I may have forgotten. So thank you so much. Sure. Jill, there continues to be a lot of conversation with regards to pet food and nutrition. We've discussed pet foods before, but it seems as though there's still a lot of information floating out there. And I think somehow, things change. What are the differences? And how should, well, first of all, what are the differences? But also, how should pet owners make a decision with regards to pet foods?
It's a great question. A few months ago, probably one of the biggest changes to pet foods in veterinary medicine has been, there was an article that came out that was written by a veterinary nutritionist from Cornell University. And she had been working with some cardiologists there. And they had noticed that there were dogs that were being diagnosed with something called dilated cardiomyopathy, which was basically heart disease.
Wow.
That can cause them to go into congestive heart failure. And the thing that was odd about it was that these were breeds that were not typically diagnosed with this particular kind of heart disease. And they started looking back and they started looking at the different dogs and talking to the owners. And one of the most common things that they found was that most of these dogs were on what we would call a boutique diet, meaning that they were on either a grain-free diet or one that was made by a small company, or again, some things we call boutique diets, again, the grain-frees and things like that, kind of a specialized diet. And some of those,
and it had nothing to do with age. I mean,
it had nothing to do with age or the only common factor that they could find was that they were all being fed not the same diet, but all, again, boutique diets. And so they started looking a little further, and what they think might be going on is that some of these diets are not properly formulated for the dogs to get enough taurine, and taurine is necessary in their diet for a normal heart, for the heart to function normally. And when they started looking at these boutique diets, they realized that the protein ratios didn't have enough taurine in it. And what they were seeing is some of these, and you've probably seen these foods before, they have kangaroo now, they have rabbit, they have duck, they have venison. And what they're finding is that maybe some of these different types of meat proteins don't have the amount of taurine, or they're not digesting, breaking down to the amount of taurine that these dogs need.
Wow.
So that's why they're recommending, if you're looking for a dog food, to look at some of the bigger name brands that have done the research behind it, such as Hill's Diet, Purina, Royal Canin. Those are the companies that have done the research in their foods, and they've proven that they have enough taurine in them.
And also, I guess, when in doubt, research it or ask your veterinarian for some opinions.
Yep.
You know, it's interesting because I mentioned about age, but it's not always an age issue with an animal's health. One of the things that in fact, I almost said you recently received the training, but it's been about almost a year now, hasn't it, since you went into training for acupuncture? I
was thinking about it. I started my classes over a year ago, and I got my final certification. It was this June, I believe. I finished my paper and everything. Yeah.
You might remind our audience, what is acupuncture and what does it do?
Acupuncture is a thousands-year-old practice of applying needles to certain points in the body to get a desired result. And it's been used in humans for a long time. What a lot of people don't know is it actually started with animals, with horses. But it's something that is used to, I would say, most effectively for pain control in animals. We use it quite well for pain control and also for neurologic problems.
And you've been doing it long enough now that you've seen some results. What kind of results have you seen?
Probably the most dramatic things that I see are when we have a dog or a cat, or in one instance a kitten that comes in that had spinal trauma and was unable to use the hind legs. Wow. And after a series of acupuncture was able to walk and play and climb and do things like that. So
become an animal.
An animal
or
again.
A pet,
exactly.
Not an animal, but
yeah.
a pet.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it can relieve, acupuncture can relieve pain. Mm-hmm. What are the signs that either a dog or a cat, or are there different signs that they may be in pain? Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Because I think all of us want to know if we perhaps have an animal who's in pain, and what do we need to do about it?
Right. Dogs let on a little bit more, but both dogs and cats are very good at hiding pain. So a lot of people think that their dog or their cat will cry out if they're painful, mm-hmm. and that's usually not the case. Cats are especially good at hiding pain.
Is that right?
Yes. So for them, I'll start with them just because they're so good at it. But a lot of times what you'll see is you'll have a cat that used to jump up on the counter, doesn't do it anymore, moves around a lot less, maybe gaining weight from being less active, or sometimes losing weight. You'll feel run your hand along their spine and it'll feel thinner, bonier, right. That kind of thing. They may get crankier, they may get grouchy and not want to be petted, or if you pet them in a certain place, they might try to bite you. It's very subtle, and I encourage people to look for just changes in how they act. Dogs are a little more straightforward in that they're more active typically, so it's easier to tell if they're less active. So you can have something where they just refuse to jump up in the car anymore, or they don't want to do stairs. They're stiff when they get up in the mornings, but then they seem to limber up throughout the day. Occasionally, I should say occasionally, a lot of times they will limp, but usually that's after the pain has been going on for some time. So you have to look for the subtle signs, the not wanting to play anymore, not wanting to chase the ball or chase the ball for shorter periods of time, not wanting to go for long walks anymore. They want to do shorter walks. Again, they rarely cry out in pain, and that seems to be something that people typically look for, but it's really the subtle things, the not wanting to move around as much, or just not wanting to be touched as much as they used to.
Sure, and that certainly would be a sign to a loving relationship between mm-hmm. a pet and the pet's companion. I almost mm-hmm. said owner, but companion.
Yeah.
What about, we see changes taking place certainly in our bodies as seasons change. Mm-hmm. Is that also true with animals as it gets colder, as an example? Is that perhaps will inspire greater pain with arthritis or some mm-hmm. of those?
It sure can, sure. Just like with people, they tend to, the cold can really exacerbate pain. A lot of times we'll have animals come in over the wintertime acting painful or limping, mm-hmm. more stiff than they were during the summer months. I have a lot of people tell me, oh boy, I can't wait for spring and summer, because then they feel better and they move around better. And so yes, absolutely.
Now, do they also, it just occurred to me, can that be a greater increase in perhaps their allergies towards, do pets have allergies?
Oh boy, pets absolutely have allergies. Oh yes, just like we do, and they can be allergic to the same things that we can be allergic to. So grasses, pollen, weeds, trees, human dander. Some animals are actually allergic to people. Cat dander, flea bites, they can be allergic to flea saliva. They can be allergic to a lot of different things. So we can sometimes see animals that are severely allergic September, October, or sometimes in the springtime. It can absolutely vary with the season.
And what can you do to help them?
We have a lot of really good medications out there now. Yes,
okay.
It used to be we had to use steroids or antihistamines, but now there's a couple of really good medications out. There's one injectable medication out that really helps animals with allergies, and they also do allergy testing and allergy injections for pets as well. So we have those options.
And if an owner senses that could be a problem, they should bring them in and have them checked, I'm assuming.
Right.
That's something that, as you say, testing can be done.
Mm-hmm. Testing can be done, and a lot of times, even if you opt not to do the testing, we can help with the symptoms. So a lot of signs of allergies, you'll have pets licking their feet, scratching, but a lot of times licking their feet, whether it's the front or the back feet, or sometimes all four, chewing at their skin, sometimes chronic ear infections that come and go and come and go, and it seems like you just treated one and you've got another one coming up again. Skin infections, things like that.
You know, speaking of licking feet and their feet and that kind of thing, one of the things that I know you and I've talked about is an owner should be very cautious about the heat in pavement and taking their dog or well, I guess you don't. Do you take cats for walks?
Some people do.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. Taking your dog for a walk because their pads are very sensitive. And when you were talking about perhaps licking a dog licking their feet or whatever, that could be a sign of perhaps being burned or whatever. Is that possible?
It can be, and you can look for other things too. A lot of times the pads will be swollen or peeling even, and very red. I know one time, a long time ago, I had my dog on a tennis court with me for not very long, and it happened to her, and I felt awful. But it doesn't take long on hot pavement for their feet to get
Did she beat you, by the way?
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah, she's really good.
Well, you know, you mentioned the heat, but I guess the same thing could be with the cold, could it not?
Sure. I think in the wintertime, I probably see more issues with the salt that we put down for ice.
Absolutely.
They'll try to lick that off of their feet, and that can cause irritation to the feet, and sometimes it can cause them to be sick to their stomach as well.
I was going to say, that would also not be good for them from a digestive standpoint, would it?
No, not at all.
Wow, it's amazing. You know, and I think so many of the things that we just kind of take for granted, you know, they should be able to handle it because we can handle it, forgetting that we may be wearing boots or shoes or heavy something to protect our feet. So
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with regards to what's good for your animals, as well as some issues that come up every once in a while. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Folks, why won't we go to the doctor? My uncle called, speech all slurred, complaining his arms numb. He called everyone. He even called my daughter Tiara, because, you know, she's got a year of nursing. Everyone thinks he needs to go to the doctor, including me. So he said, well, will you take me? I'm like, I'm on the road. He goes, I'll wait. Stroke's no joke. If you or someone you love have symptoms of stroke, don't wait. It may be too late. Dial 911. Time loss is brain loss.
Welcome home, man.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. My guest today is Dr. Jill Brady, and she is one of the veterinarians with the Westside Veterinary Clinic here in Jefferson City. And by the way, I didn't mention earlier, but you can visit their website. It's got some real good information on it. It's westsidevetjc.com, or you can check them out on Facebook. And we'll talk a little later about contacting them if you have questions with regards to your pets. So again, thanks for joining me. You know, we're going to switch the focus a little bit. Recently, you said there was a case of rabies reported down in Kirksville. And I don't know if you have any details on that. I know when we discussed it, it scared the heck out of me because, you know, we're always trying to protect our animals. But
Sure.
do you have any details on that?
What I know about it is it was a bat that had rabies that a human came in contact with, and I believe it was in their home. Fortunately, the bat, I think the person who found the bat took it in to the shelter. They tested it, but they tried to find out who the person was before they left, but didn't catch them in time. And so when they tested the bat and found out it was positive for rabies, then it was, okay, we need to get the word out and let people know.
Right.
She needs to come back in because she was in contact with a rabid bat. So
That's scary.
It's very
for
scary.
some reason, I just made the assumption that it wasn't a wild animal, so to speak, but you know, that's probably the easiest way to perhaps come in contact with that dreaded disease, is it not? Perhaps from the wild animals?
Yes, these days anymore, that's the most common way to come in contact. And in fact, I had a client about 7 or 8 years ago who had a bat get into her home here in Jefferson City, and came into the kitchen and found her 2 dogs playing with it. I guess they had knocked it down and killed it, and she took it into the shelter, and the bat was tested positive for rabies.
Wow.
So one dog had not been vaccinated for rabies. The other one had a rabies vaccine, but just as a puppy. And she ended up having to quarantine her dog for 6 months at our clinic. And it was a hard thing for her to do.
Absolutely.
Not just from a standpoint of you lose your friend there for 6 months. Sure. And she could come and visit, but she couldn't touch her dog. She couldn't
and of course an animal doesn't
walk
understand
her dog.
Why am I here?
Exactly. So it was very hard for her monetarily, and just from the standpoint of she just wasn't able to see her friend for a while.
So obviously it is very important to have your pet vaccinated. How often should this be done?
Typically, most pets, all pets need to have it done at 16 weeks of age. Some get it a little bit sooner.
16 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some get it a little bit sooner. Usually 12 to 16 weeks is probably the most common time. The shelters do it a little bit earlier if they can. And then they get a rabies vaccine again a year later.
Okay.
And then depending on where you live, then it's either from there once every year or once every 3 years. I think there is also a 2-year rabies vaccine, but they do still need to get that regularly throughout their lives.
Throughout their lives. It's not a one-time situation.
Correct.
And by the way, if you have any questions with regards to your pet, I encourage you to get in touch with your veterinarian. If you don't have a veterinarian and you choose to get in touch with Westside, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call 573-893-7707. Or again, you can check them out on Facebook, and I'm assuming they can contact you via Facebook as well. I had a conversation with my sister. My sister and I are very close, and we talk once a day. And I've never owned a cat, but my sister has a cat that she adores, and she says when it's time for her to take it, Tuxedo is his name, take Tuxedo into the vet, either to stay or a trip or to be checked out or whatever. She says he gets crazy. And is there a way that one can settle down your pet, or particularly a cat, but settle down a pet prior to going into a veterinarian?
Sure. There are a couple of good resources for some of the information that I'll give you. One is Indoor Pet at osu.edu, and OSU is for Ohio State University.
Okay.
And they have a website that you can go to, or Cornell University also has a good site to go to that describes different ways that you can use. But we have some really good anti-anxiety medications these days that we can use to really help make the process easier for dogs and for cats. And there are things that you can do for cats also, as far as a lot of cats have a fear of the kennel or the crate that you use to get them to the clinic, because they know, so a lot of times we recommend to people, take it out a few weeks ahead of time, leave it sitting out, put some treats in it. If they have a favorite bed they like to use, put that in there. start feeding them right nearby the crate. Leave the door open, let them go in and out however they want to, and make it just a kind of a piece of the furniture.
Sure.
And then that way they get used to going in and out. You can actually train them to learn to like it. There are also great pheromone sprays and diffusers that you can use to help in that process to make them less stressed out. When they get to the clinic, we try to follow what we call fear-free practices. So I've done a certification on how to make their visit at the clinic less stressful using pheromones. We have soothing music that plays, different things that we can do just to make that less stressful for them.
It's interesting that you mentioned the cage. I hadn't even thought of that, and I think probably most pet owners they may hide that cage or put it in storage or whatever. So that's a wonderful opportunity. So, and I'm assuming that if the cat or the animal is less stressed, then obviously the owner is going to be less stressed as well.
Yes.
We're always that way.
Well, and since we've started recommending that to clients, I have people all the time telling me, oh my gosh, that's the best visit we've ever had. That's, they didn't cry and they didn't scream and they weren't unhappy, and it really does make a big difference. If you can start them off without being stressed out, then it keeps that anxiety level much lower.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's good information. And once again, that website that you mentioned.
Indoor Pet at OSU, indoorpet.osu, indoorpet.edu at osu.com. That's it.
Say it one more time.
Indoorpet.edu at osu.com.
Okay, very good. And once again, if you have questions, we can always call the clinic. We've talked about seasonal changes earlier, but I think it's amazing, and I didn't really think about this until you and I had a short conversation, and that is, we all kind of prepare for winter. The winter storms, the snow, the ice. Let's make sure that we have ice melt and the snow shovels and all that stuff, and that we have emergency kits for ourselves. But you mentioned it's important to have emergency kits for animals as well. Tell us about that.
There's a couple different emergency kits that I think of. One is the emergency kit, for instance, Hurricane Florence. You think of all these people who are having to evacuate with their pets, and they recommend having your pets have extra medications, have food, bedding, things like that, just ready for them to pick up to go if you need to. Another emergency kit that you can have at home is a few simple things that a lot of people have on hand already. But a lot of times, if there's an emergency, you can kind of already start treating them if there's a problem. A couple of good things to have on hand. Benadryl is a wonderful thing to have on hand for your pet. For bee stings, allergies, things like that. We see a lot of times they can have allergic reactions to stings, and Benadryl, if you can get that started right away, will really help. I recommend calling your veterinarian for the dosage for your pet. Another good thing to have on hand is hydrogen peroxide. Sometimes pets eat things they shouldn't. What comes to mind, about a month ago, I had, 2 calls on dogs that ate rat poison.
Oh, wow.
Or chocolate is another big one that we see.
Yes.
And so hydrogen peroxide you can keep on hand. That's a good way to get them to vomit. So you want to contact your veterinarian first, but if they eat something, that's something that you have on hand that you can give them that will hopefully cause them to vomit up something that could potentially kill them.
Sure.
Bandaging is always good to have on hand as well. A thermometer is excellent to have on hand. You want to use it rectally, so you do not want to, you make sure it's marked for pets only.
Are their temperatures usually about the same
Their
as a human?
temperatures are higher than ours.
Higher, okay.
So dogs, you can be anywhere from usually about 100 to 102.5. Cats can run 99 to 102 generally. So they're going to be warmer than us. Another good thing to have on hand is Imodium. A lot of diarrheas can be treated with Imodium, and it's the same thing, contact your veterinarian for a dosage. Aspirin, the heart healthy aspirin, the 81 milligram aspirin is great to have on hand. It's actually safer to give your pets. You don't ever want to give Aleve or ibuprofen or any of those other ones, but just regular aspirin you can give. Get the dosage from your veterinarian, but it
Right.
works very well for pain, for just those minor type situations where you need something for pain and inflammation. Trying to think if there was anything else.
Well, one thing that you mentioned, and I learned this years ago, but be very, very careful with your animal around chocolate.
Yes.
Chocolate is not good.
No.
For at least for dogs. Now I'm assuming it would be the same for, and somehow sometimes they can be drawn to that because of the smell.
Oh, yes.
You know, we all think it's wonderful, but don't take any chances.
Right.
So,
Right.
well, it's been good information. And if you have questions, once again, or concerns, pick up the phone. You can call your vet, or you can call Westside. It's 573-893-7707. Check out their website, or as I mentioned, and the website is westsidevetjc.com, or you can check them out on Facebook. And Jill, you always give us great information. I appreciate everything you do, and God bless you for taking care of many of our animals who we all adore. So thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
And we look forward to seeing you next time. Good night and God bless.